The classroom buzzed with the soft hum of student voices, a low murmur that faded as the door swung open and Professor Mora stepped inside. With her long, dark robes and the cool air of authority that surrounded her, she silenced the class with a single glance. Kaius shifted in his seat, his eyes gliding across the rows of desks and students scattered throughout the room. It was another regular day at Mana Academy, one of many he'd spent here over the years, listening to lectures on the world's history and trying to stay unnoticed. Today, we'll be reviewing the origins of the First Surge, Professor Mora announced, her voice carrying easily through the quiet room. The event that reshaped this world and birthed the institutions that stand to protect it. Who can tell me what the First Surge truly was? Kaius leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting to the window. It was a gray afternoon, with thick clouds blanketing the sky, but the view from the classroom still gave him a distant sense of calm. Outside, the academy's sprawling grounds were dotted with tall, ancient trees and sprawling stone structures, their edges softened by the mist that hung low in the air. The peaceful sight almost made him forget the looming expectations he felt every day as a student at the academy. "Callan?" Professor Mora's voice broke through his thoughts. Callan, sitting across from him in the row, straightened and raised his hand with a casual air. The boy was always confident, even when it came to answering questions he knew well. The First Surge was when the portals opened, right? A bunch of monsters and magic spilled out, and that's when Mana really started to affect humans and creatures. Professor Mora nodded approvingly. Correct. But what else? The portals didn't just bring monsters. They brought something far more dangerous. Mana. Kaius perked up slightly. Mana, the source of everything, magic, power, and the reason for the Academy's existence. The professor continued, pacing slowly in front of the blackboard where ancient symbols and runes were inscribed in neat rows. Mana, an energy both ancient and unpredictable, began to infuse the world. It altered the balance of nature and created life forms that were once unimaginable. These beings, twisted by the raw power of mana, came through the portals, threatening to tear the world apart. Monsters, another student muttered under their breath. Yes, monsters, Professor Mora agreed, her expression turning somber. But not just mindless creatures. Some of these monsters were powerful, intelligent, and capable of causing destruction on a scale the world had never known. Left unchecked, they would have overwhelmed everything. She paused for effect, letting the weight of her words settle over the class. Kaius glanced around, noticing the quiet attention from his classmates. They weren't interested in the theoretical details, but in the practical truths. They knew the monsters still posed a threat, even years after the initial surge. Professor Mora's gaze swept over the room. As the world struggled to contain the chaos, certain humans began to show signs of being affected by mana. They were stronger, faster, and more in tune with the magic that flooded the land. These individuals would come to be known as guardians. Kaius didn't look up, but his fingers subconsciously tightened around the bracelet on his wrist. He could feel the cool metal against his skin, though its significance wasn't yet clear to him. He knew the world around him valued guardians, and his parents had always encouraged him to be like them, though they'd never pushed him into a specific path. Guardians were the first line of defense, Professor Mora continued, trained to close the portals and protect the world from the monsters. The Academy was formed to teach these individuals how to harness mana and become the protectors of civilization. There was a slight shift in the air, a subtle tension that always followed these lessons. Kaius was used to it. Mana was revered, and those who could control it were given a status that placed them far above ordinary people. For most of the students in the academy, that meant a future as a guardian, with all the respect and honor that came with it. The professor's voice softened. To this day, guardians remain our protectors, ensuring that the portals stay sealed and the monsters remain at bay. But there are still dangers lurking. Even now, Portals are opened, and while some are small, others are unpredictable. A wave of unease rippled through the room, but Kaius only stared at the professor's back. Professor Mora continued, her tone taking on a more reflective quality. It is a delicate balance, one that we must maintain to ensure the survival of humanity. Kaius's eyes flickered toward the other students. Most were caught up in the details of the discussion, already imagining themselves as part of that heroic legacy. He, however, was trying his best to remain unnoticed in a world that seemed to demand so much more than he could offer. For him, the world of guardians and monsters was just a distant story, a story that didn't seem to involve him at all. But that would change. That much he was certain of.